how did you get your friends and family and I met your husband, by the way, he's awesome. But how did you get like all of them on board? Because I know, because it's almost like as my buddy says, is that right now you're in the Bay,
Yeah.
and now you're out in the ocean, and that's a nice analogy, because in the Bay it's very safe, but now you go out into the ocean, and everybody perceives it as extremely risky, except for probably now they're going, oh, okay, yeah, I supported you all along, right?
Yeah.
But in the meantime, don't you feel that resistance and guilt and questioning and all that stuff, and it chips away at your mindset, right?
Yeah, definitely. So first of all, I do not share that with my parents until I was successful. So I think that was really good. And because I didn't, I kind of set it up in the slow way where I didn't just like quit in day one. And I think that's actually probably a better way for people who want to kind of ease into it versus quit day zero, because now you have the stress of making money, etc. So I kind of slowly increase the portfolio. And also real estate investing is awesome because even though you're actively participating in there, it's still passive income. So relatively, instead of taking another job, it's relatively quite low hours on your first couple projects. And also part of what my husband does is I actually included him. He was really handy. So he renovated, as mentioned before, he renovated the first 2 units. And we realized that we don't work very well together. And that, but you kind of see the economy kind of works. And I kind of try to show him the numbers, even though he's not very interested in that. But we kind of essentially created a team. He is coming from the builder's background, so it is a little bit resistant because he's seeing his dad lost it all. His dad was a developer, lost it all, and then never came back because his dad never tried again. One key on entrepreneurship is like you just take your failure and get up and redo it again. Some people never get up. So that was kind of how I get them signed up. And with my parents, literally, I didn't tell them what I was doing until it was a certain size of portfolio that I'm like, hey, I'm going to make the jump. And funny story over there too, my dad retired the same year I retired, technically retired. Retirement for me as entrepreneurs is just the minute that you quit the jobs you don't want to work on. But for him, it's true retirement. So we quit and we retired the same year. And he actually, the first 2 years, he's like, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? I'm like, hey, it's already done that. Like, yeah. So, but later on, see the success. He's like, oh, I always thought you had the entrepreneur spirit.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So wait a second, you and your dad retired the same year?
Yes.
That's awesome. Just think about the significance.
Yeah, it was a 30-year difference between our age. So yeah,
that's insane. And my guess is, I don't know your father at all, but you probably have a bigger net worth now too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's an engineer, and then he worked really hard. He's very academic. And so that kind of restricts it. And when I first started working in this Fortune 500 company, he's really proud. And he's actually telling me to go work on the weekends, just to work extra hour, so that mindset is very different.
Yeah. By the way, congratulations. You broke through a lot of barriers. I want to bring up something that I think is important that's not discussed a lot. And that's the people's relationship with money. I call them money wounds, like your husband's. They watched his father. Those are money wounds. Those are things that people have to punch through. And I'm sure your father had some. Your mom. My parents certainly did. I remember I told my dad I lost 250 grand once. He about fell out of his chair. He's like, what? It's interesting, these ceilings and these barriers, right? That people have, these money wounds, and they're real. They're everywhere, but people don't really talk about them, right? So
yeah,
you were able to punch through those, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, we did have our failures. I mean, every single investment, I can say it's never as expected. There's always something that comes up. And our first like commercial multifamily, like a small property, 12 unit. I wrote up this contract. It was the first time I take on a partnerships. And it was it is local at the time. And it's the first time I kind of pushed it far enough, because I live in Seattle, invest in Tacoma, far enough that you needed a property manager. So these are deliberate things that I set up to learn. And from there, like I was like, hey, we're buying an A cap property, which A cap property in today's market, you may be able to find one or two now. Like 6 months ago, you won't be able to find any. But we found this 8 cap property, right? So it's basically cash flowing 8%, etc. on paper. So it was not a good place to buy your property at, because the property I didn't know. I was chasing cash flow really hard. And so I ended up in a place that is pretty high on crime. And for all I know is that for 2 years, I set up on my partnerships, really beneficial for my investor, but not for myself. So for 2 years, we've been just kind of footing the bill for the property with capital improvements instead of getting cash flow. I mean, on paper, cash flow still looks really great, not, but excluding the money that we're footing. And we didn't budget for a really good budget for renovation, because the first project we did that. So we were kind of footing the bill because I didn't want my investor to take the hit. We ended up made it right though, but for these 2 years, you just feel like, hey, is there ever an end to this? Like, this is not what I signed up, so things like that. And obviously, most recently, there's also, like we lost $500,000 on earnest money. That's hard-earned money in our pocket because we have to walk away from a deal because how quickly the market has changed, and we just couldn't make that number work, right? With the discounts, we asked for the sellers and etc. So we just had to walk away from the deal and lost $500,000. So, when you're thinking about back then, it's 8% on maybe like a $4 million property, right? To now it's $500,000 loss. So I don't share these with my parents. So hopefully they're not listening to your podcast.
Well, by
Yeah.
the way, thank you for it's interesting because I always tell people you don't really learn a lot like when things are going well. Like, the market's going up and you look like a star, but you sure learn a lot when you buy a property like that 12 unit, or maybe you lose $500,000, because I have stories like that too.
Yeah.
And I always feel like now looking back, I'm glad I went through that because it made me make a better decision today. It helped my investors today. These small things, from the budgeting to the market selection to the capitalization to the location, all of that stuff, it's all a process of small little mistakes, right?
Sometimes big ones. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes big ones, right? But
Yeah.
I guarantee you the trajectory you're on, they're going to seem very small at some point.